George wanted to stand out as someone special. He actually sat in the most unusual seat at the auction. As long as someone sits in that seat, it means they will pay the price other bidders call out to buy every single item at the auction. George had no idea what that seat meant. But even after the staff explained it to him, he still stayed seated and refused to get up. Could George's family really be rich enough to blow money like this? Definitely not. George was relying on two other women, Lucy and Anna, not because they were wealthy, but because both of them had a very powerful suitor, Hans. But Hans didn't stop George's behavior, because he had zero intention of paying for him. In the previous lifetime, Hans was killed by George and those two women. In this lifetime, Hans planned to personally send all three of them to hell. Hans casually watched George act all arrogant. George started smashing items on display at the auction. Each of them was worth at least tens of millions of dollars. The more George destroyed, the happier Hans became. Anna and Lucy, sitting nearby, didn't notice anything strange about Hans. They just assumed Hans was the same as always, that he'd endlessly cover for them. So they acted even more outrageous. Thinking the view from the second row wasn't good enough, they straight up kicked the VIP in the first row, Ryan, out and took his seats. Ryan was the real owner behind the auction house. His family's influence was enormous. He had never seen anyone this rude. He suspected they might be wealthy heirs from some hidden family. Before confirming Lucy and Anna's background, Ryan chose to hold back. Hans saw all of this. Ryan didn't know their backgrounds, but Hans did. Watching the three of them act wild without his restraint, Hans was thrilled. When Anna looked over, Hans covered his mouth to hide a laugh. But Lucy and Anna thought Hans was sad because he hadn't won their affection. They became even more convinced Hans still adored them, and behaved even worse. By the end of the auction, everyone remembered the image of them being rich. After seeing George light up the sky with crazy bidding, no one held back. The bids went higher and higher. Finally, the staff calculated the total, $500 million. The staff brought all the auction items to George, waiting for him to pay, with a strict deadline. George quickly looked at Lucy and Anna. Lucy didn't panic at all and directly ordered Hans to pay. But Hans smiled and asked the staff what this transaction had to do with him. At that point, everyone understood perfectly. The three dared to act this arrogant only because they were treating Hans as their backer. Lucy and Anna had been using Hans's money to support a man competing with Hans. This deal had nothing to do with Hans. The staff also figured out the dynamics between the four. There was no confusion. They stated clearly Hans didn't need to pay. The debt would be under Anna and Lucy's names. Hans politely stepped away, leaving Anna and Lucy confused. They never imagined Hans would walk away. The staff urged them again. Anna, annoyed, planned to use funds from a branch company to cover the $500 million for now. But when the staff tried her card, the transaction failed because it only had $3,000 left. Anna immediately suspected Hans had moved company funds because the company was founded by Hans, Anna, and Lucy. Hans had full authority to move money. Lucy was even angrier and called the finance department on the spot, demanding all transaction records from recent years. But the financial statements showed the company's funds were spent on team-building events, and the one who suggested the events was George, the secretary. Lucy and Anna were speechless, but the staff didn't care. They reminded them the countdown was almost over. By now, Ryan had also figured out these weren't any rich heirs. They were obviously just three freeloaders living off Hans. Knowing their true identities, Ryan no longer planned to tolerate them. Seeing that Hans wasn't going to intervene, Ryan called security to surround them, planning to wait until the countdown ended and then settle all the insults and humiliation. Anna looked at the security surrounding them and Hans watching the show and shouted a warning at Hans. If he didn't step in, she'd never speak to him again. But Hans treated it like a joke. Seeing the guards getting ready to seize them, Anna loudly declared they still had money. Hans perked up, curious where they thought they'd get money. Anna gave a signal, and Hans's own maids and butlers walked in carrying safes. When the safes were opened, they were filled with Hans's precious jewelry. When did the three of them convince the household staff? Hans's anger finally exploded. He was ready to see what other tricks they could possibly pull.